with us right here is Aliza Layne. She is the author of one of the books that they want to ban from the library. So, Aliza, tell us a little bit about the books and maybe some other books you've written, and tell us why is everybody up in arms?
Oh, so my book is called Beetle and the Hollow Bones. It is a graphic novel, which is just a fancy way to say comic book, for kids ages 8 to 12. But I've been told that I have readers that are, as old as like 18 and 20, which is great. I love being able to talk to them and talk to such a broad range of kids. And my book is a fantasy adventure that happens to have a lesbian romance. And it's sort of in exactly the same way that you would see it in a book with straight protagonists. There's a love interest and they share a kiss at the end. And I believe I wasn't able to see what the specific challenges were for my book, but it's also likely that because it's like a fantasy witch book, that it was probably also challenged for witchcraft, which I think is kind of funny.
It's not pornographic.
No, it's not pornographic.
Is this book in other libraries?
This book is in libraries all over the country. It is also translated into Italian and French. So I'm lucky enough to have copies all over the world for English, Italian, and French readers. And I have 2 sequels forthcoming. And I do think that, you mentioned, books being pornographic and books being inappropriate for, child readers. And I think an interesting thing about libraries as a service is that your librarians are acting as a guide and a signpost for what section you're going to go to. They are already determining, appropriateness level for kids. And so it's my understanding that a lot of the books that have more explicit material or that cover more explicit topics are exactly in the sections that they're supposed to be in for exactly the age group that they're supposed to be seen by. And it doesn't seem like an enormous problem. And then the other thing with that, talking about what the nature of pornography is and what the nature of explicit material is, the thing that I think is really interesting about this debate and the thing that I think parents are really concerned about is losing the ability to explain to their children what things are and how things go before they find it naturally in the wild. And the problem with that is that people wait and they wait too long, and kids are going to find it naturally in the wild anyway. And the problem with challenging library materials about this topic is that the library is one of the safest places where they can engage with material that is a little bit older, that covers topics that they are curious about, that they're going to seek out in other places, that they could seek out in much more dangerous avenues like online or, God forbid, with adults. The problem with banning this material is that the inside of a book is the safest way that a child can first encounter this and determine whether they're ready, whether they feel comfortable, whether they want to put the book down. They can always just close the book and walk away if they're uncomfortable. They can always do that. And kids don't have a lot of autonomy to stop an interaction and walk away. And being able to practice that autonomy ahead of time with material that they completely control the situation, they can close that book, they can walk away. That's a really valuable experience for children to have, and taking that away from them is really dangerous because they might have that experience with an adult where they can't control that interaction, or with an older child or with a child of the same age where they can't get away or they feel too pressured or too uncomfortable. I'm really passionate about not banning material that explores these topics, especially for teenagers, because they're going to find it, they're going to see it, it's probably going to be online, and you don't want it to be with an adult. You want it to be in a safe place full of mandated reporters where they control what happens and they can walk away.
Now, you don't have any objection of them putting your book in a restricted area, do you? Like age groups, like we're going to put these for...
I think my book in particular has material. I definitely think that YA books should be in the YA section.
Right.
I think that
8 to 13, is that what you said?
my book is a middle grade book, so it should be with the middle grade books. And middle grade is just what middle schoolers are
When
reading.
you first wrote this book and you decided what age, what did you do? Did you have to send it to an organization to kind of like tell you what age appropriate your book was written in?
Absolutely. So my book is commercially published through Simon & Schuster, through Athenaeum, which is one of their imprints. And my publisher and I worked together to determine what age group was the correct age group for my book, and we decided that it was for kids 8 to 12.
So it wasn't something you just decided on your own?
No.
Well, Liza, what about your other new books? What are they on? Are they on similar topics?
So I've got
Fantasy?
2 sequels forthcoming for Beetle and the Hollow Bones. The second one is called Beetle and the Chimera Carnival, and it is a dragon mystery with the same characters and in the same setting. And then the third book in the series is still untitled. That one I'm working on now, alongside finishing the second one.
Well, I can tell you, dragons and dinosaurs are something that middle schoolers love.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
All right. Well, good. What do you think of all this support that you see out here today?
I'm really, really happy to see the community gathering together for this. Especially, I'm really happy to see adults going to bat for kids on this topic, because I think a lot of kids in this area are worried to speak up, and a lot of kids everywhere are worried to speak up about topics like this where it's so close to their heart. And you also see, essentially, if you look at the numbers, your state collects certain statistical data based on whether the children who are reporting that data are straight or not straight. And if you look at those statistical documents, in your state, LGBT kids are statistically significantly more likely to be sexually assaulted. They're statistically more likely to attempt suicide, and they're statistically more likely to experience abuse. And having kids show up here is extraordinarily brave. It's extraordinarily brave to exist at all in this environment, whether you're out or not.
How about other libraries? Have you seen this kind of activity on your book anywhere else?
Absolutely. We had a really interesting situation in my area where pride flags were actually banned from being displayed in our schools, which I thought was really interesting. And so I showed up for that. But this was actually the first time that I'm aware of that my book has been challenged. That's not the case for all of this material, and I really wanted to show up and go to bat for the material that, first of all, the authors can't be here for whatever reason, location, disability, whatever that is. A friend of mine in particular has been working, the author of another one of the books that were on the list. They and I have been talking, and just kind of drumming up a bunch of support for this effort in particular. And I just personally, when I found out that it was close enough that I could drive down and involve myself, I immediately wanted to, because I want to support efforts like this. This is an incredible effort. This is an incredibly brave and interesting and cool thing to do, despite the tough circumstances.
As an author, did you ever think your book would ever be banned?
Probably. Yeah, I mean, like, it's interesting because in the world of media, there exists this misconception that stuff like this doesn't happen, and that no one needs to come out anymore, and that the type of material that I'm working with, where it's just like a romance between two middle schoolers where they have like a kiss at the end, something like that you see all over the place. And like Percy Jackson has this, between the like boy lead and the girl lead. You see this everywhere, and so in all of these like popular titles, and so I'm sure that happens in like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and things like that. And so you don't. It's very interesting to have my work challenged for something that in a book, you know, if this happened between two straight characters, would go completely unthought about. But I did expect it. I did expect it to happen eventually because I'm a lesbian and I already kind of live in the climate of that because I'm from a rural area and I'm not unused to that whole argument.
Yeah, how about your publisher? Did they have any comments
about this situation? Not in particular. I haven't.
I'm sure this is mild compared to some of the books.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. No, this is relatively mild. I'm not in danger of like being mass banned the way a lot of material is, and especially Black and Indigenous authors and authors of color are way, way, way more often challenged than I ever would be. And that's the other thing. I wanted to come down and go to bat for the books on the list that are by authors of color and Jewish authors and, you know, authors outside of my own identity.
Do you think that these future books you're writing will be toned down a little bit?
No.
Toned up? What do you think?
Without there being any connection to this situation, I was already getting more aggressive in book 2.
You're pushing the boundary.
Yeah, because, I mean, I think kids deserve to see the full breadth of their experiences reflected in the things that they're reading when they're having those experiences. And censoring content for children so that things in it do not reflect the experiences that real children have, I think is just counterintuitive.
How about in your own experience growing up? Did you use this library as a tool to educate yourself?
My local libraries, absolutely. I lived pretty far out from my local library, so I wasn't able to access it very often. And then I was also in Catholic schools, so there was no LGBT material at all when I was growing up, and very little mention was made of it. And I really had no experience with the concept of being gay until I was in my teens, and didn't realize I was gay until I was almost in my 20s. And growing up that way, you grow up isolated from your community. People are very... I think culture and heritage and connection to a person's roots is something that is super important for a lot of people, and that people hold super dear to their hearts. And one thing that is really challenging about growing up gay is that you do not have that community. You're not born into that community. You grow up isolated from that community. And my generation in particular, a lot of our like gay parents, so to speak, a lot of our family was massacred. A lot of our family was genocided during the AIDS crisis, and you grow up missing them. And having the library as a place of safety and as a place of home was not possible for me as a kid, but it's possible for these kids now that my generation has grown up into adults. We want to be there for them. We want to support them and make these places for them, because a lot of us, as hard as the prior generation fought, a lot of us simply grew up without it, and we don't want anybody to not have it anymore.
Well, thank you so much for coming this way and supporting our local library.
Yeah, thank you so much for having this chat with me. I really, really appreciate it.